this other stuff that's going on in the world of sports. And the first thing I want to talk about is college football. I do.
Well, it's a big weekend. It's a real big weekend for everyone who's paying any attention. The SEC West is what I would call a clusterfuck.
Yeah.
And but a lot of the predictions you see is two SEC West teams in. And I'm an SEC fan. I don't think I'm not shy about it, and I could see that happening.
I think it will happen. I mean, it's obviously everybody the second college football rankings came out. They had Mississippi State at 1, Florida State at 2. Then they had Auburn at 3, which I definitely thought they were a solid 3. And then they had Oregon at 4. I like this. After the second week, I liked it. I like the fact that they had Alabama at 5, and I like the fact that they had TCU at 6. TCU has the chance to move up this week when they play Kansas State. That's going to be a tough game. They're playing another number 7 team in the country. So if they can go in there and beat, Kansas State's actually coming to them. If they can go and into this weekend and beat Kansas State and actually beat them decisively, then there's a possibility that they could maybe make a move. But you got to look at it. Oregon is at number 4. They're playing Utah at 17. Okay, you got Bama going to LSU.
Yeah, that's huge.
This weekend is just stacked with so much.
Well, and then the other thing is you know who Bama plays next week?
After this? Who?
Yeah. Mississippi State.
I'm going to tell you what. It's Bama. I don't think Bama's going to get past your boys this weekend.
Oh, dude. If LSU plays like they did last week, this week, Bama's in trouble.
They're in trouble.
I don't think Bama is as good this year as they will be in the upcoming years. I think if they can keep Lane Kiffin in there as the offensive coordinator, and I don't think that's going to last long, I think he's going to have a chance to really open up that offense. But the one thing that they have a problem with is I noticed this past week when they were playing, when LSU whooped up on Ole Miss, and I understand the score wasn't like what I'm saying, but if you watch the game, you have to understand LSU dominated that game, even having 3 turnovers.
And LSU, has looked – LSU is one of these SEC teams. Now, the same applies to Alabama that has got better and better. Both of these teams, and these SEC West teams especially, you see that they just have such a turnover. They lose so many players to the NFL that the new ones need to get acclimated with the system, like the freshmen and everything.
All I heard in the LSU game was freshman, redshirt freshman. I'm just thinking, holy cow, if these kids can stay eligible. Yeah. But the other big game this weekend is Notre Dame at Arizona. That's a huge game. That's
a huge game, and I think, it's funny because it's funny to think that Notre Dame, always, they have a pretty decent schedule all the time, and to think that they would need help. But I tell you what, they have to beat Arizona State. If they don't beat Arizona State, it's a wrap for them. Arizona State will move up considerably probably based on what happens in front of them. But even if Notre Dame beats Arizona State, they still need Florida State to do well to get in. They do. If Florida State
should run the table.
Yeah, Florida State should run the table. But if Florida State plays like a Virginia like this week and they squeak by or they do some things like that, then it's crazy.
Texas A&M's at Auburn. You got Notre Dame at Arizona. West Virginia's at Texas, which, a couple years ago would have been fun.
Right.
Now, the big game is Tennessee Martin at Mississippi State.
Are you done, motherfucker?
Yeah, just about. About the only other game this weekend, well, the 2 games. You already mentioned the Oregon at Utah. I don't think Oregon's going to beat Utah in Utah because Oregon's just too – I understand they've already got their 1 loss to Arizona, but they're such a flaky team and hit with history.
Right. It's funny, man. I look, and I'm gonna pull this up really quick while we have you on while I have you on this thing about the power index that they have in college football.
Yeah, the thing that no one pays any attention to.
But let me tell you something. It's very interesting. I didn't pay much attention to it, and then I started paying attention to it. And my whole debate was obviously with the Maryland Terrapins, and not that they're not even remotely in this. I think that the Big Ten.
Did you call them the Terrapins or the Turpulins?
The Turpulins or whatever. But it's my whole thing at the beginning of the season was this, and I'm gonna fucking argue this, and I could be wrong because it could turn around. Was that the Big Ten, and you're looking at the 2 teams in the Big Ten, the best teams are Michigan State and Ohio State. Whoever wins that, they're pretty much, if Ohio State beats Michigan State, the Big Ten's done. They're not going to get in, especially the way Ohio State got housed by Tech. You know what I mean? Well, it's just not going to happen. And my whole point at the beginning of the season, everybody's like, Maryland is going to making the transition to the Big Ten compared to the ACC. When you look at it, the ACC is much deeper and stronger than the Big Ten this year. Maryland's doing okay in the Big Ten, I mean, and you know what's funny? You see that face? It's because there's nobody in the Big Ten. And that was my argument before. Nobody in the Big Ten. It's not that Maryland is so spectacular. It's the fact that making that switch to the Big Ten was probably, this year at least, it is an easier schedule than they were in the ACC. The only 3 teams that have a power index, a high power index in the Big Ten are Michigan State, Wisconsin, and Ohio State. Meanwhile, in the top 40, the ACC has 6 teams in the top 40. It's just crazy. I don't know.
Since we talked about the junior